Picture this, it's the 1960s, and the Beatles are taking the world by storm. John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr are the biggest names in music, but behind the scenes, their personal lives are a tangled web of love, betrayal, and friendship. At the heart of it all is a story that's been whispered about for decades, a story involving Paul McCartney, John Lennon's ex-wife Cynthia, and a mysterious bond that raises eyebrows even today. Was Paul just a loyal friend supporting Cynthia through tough times, or was there something deeper, something romantic brewing between them? And could this complicated relationship have fueled the tension that tore the Beatles apart? Stick with me until the end of this video because we're diving deep into the drama, the heartbreak, and the music that defined an era. You won't want to miss a single detail of this wild ride. Let's set the stage. It's 1962 and the Beatles are on the cusp of global fame. John Lennon, the band's rebellious frontman, marries Cynthia Powell, a quiet, artistic woman who's been by his side for years. They're young, in love, and soon welcome a son, Julian. But as the Beatles' star rises, John and Cynthia's marriage begins to crumble. By 1968, their relationship is over. John moves on quickly, marrying Yoko Ono, an artist he describes as someone who shook him out of the boredom of his first marriage. Ouch. Imagine hearing your ex say that in public, especially when you're raising your son alone. Cynthia is left in the UK, navigating life post-divorce, while John and Yoko jet off to start their new chapter. But here's where things get interesting. While most of John's inner circle follows his lead and distances themselves from Cynthia, one Beatle stands out. Paul McCartney, John's closest friend and musical partner, doesn't just stay in touch with Cynthia, he goes out of his way to support her. Why? What's driving Paul to defy John and be there for his ex-wife? Let's dig in. Cynthia's memoir, titled John, gives us a front-row seat to this emotional saga. She writes that after her messy divorce, Paul was the only member of the Beatles circle who had the guts to reach out. John had made it clear he wanted everyone to cut ties with Cynthia, but Paul wasn't having it. She describes him as his own man, someone who wasn't afraid to stand up to John. Think about that for a second. John Lennon was a larger-than-life figure, charismatic, intense, and sometimes intimidating. Yet Paul, his songwriting partner and best friend, didn't hesitate to go against his wishes. One sunny afternoon, Paul showed up at Cynthia's house with a single red rose in his hand. He apologized for John's behavior, telling her he was sorry about the divorce and that John's actions weren't right. Can you imagine how much that meant to Cynthia? In a world that felt like it was turning its back on her, Paul's kindness was a lifeline, but Paul didn't stop there. He went even further, showing his care for Cynthia's son, Julian. He wrote a song for the little boy originally called Hey Jules, which later became the iconic Hey Jude. If you've ever listened to the lyrics, and anytime you feel the pain, Hey Jude, refrain, don't carry the world upon your shoulders, you can feel the tenderness in those words. Paul wasn't just writing a hit song. He was crafting a message of hope for a child caught in the crossfire of his parents' divorce. When Hey Jude was released as a single, it skyrocketed to the top of the charts, and today it boasts over 480 million streams on Spotify. It's one of the Beatles' most beloved songs, and knowing the story behind it makes it even more special. Paul's actions paint a picture of a man who genuinely cared about Cynthia and Julian. But here's the question that's been swirling for years. Was Paul's support purely platonic, or was there something more between him and Cynthia? Let's pause for a moment and consider the dynamics at play. John and Cynthia are exes, their marriage ending in a way that left Cynthia feeling abandoned. John and Paul are best friends, but their relationship is starting to fray as the Beatles' fame grows. And then there's Paul and Cynthia, whose bond seems to deepen after the divorce. It's easy to see why people have speculated about their relationship. After all, Paul wasn't just sending Cynthia a quick note or checking in casually, he was showing up at her house, writing songs for her son, and as we'll see later, even buying back a piece of her past to return to her. These aren't the actions of someone who's just being polite. They suggest a level of care and connection that stands out, especially in the high-stakes world of the Beatles, where loyalties were constantly tested. To understand this better, we need to look at the bigger picture of the Beatles' relationships. In the late 1960s, by 1967, cracks are starting to show in the band. That year, they released S.G. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, an album that's still celebrated as one of the greatest of all time. It's a masterpiece of creativity, perfectly capturing the free-spirited vibe of the 1960s. But behind the scenes, things aren't so harmonious. C.T. Pepper was largely Paul's brainchild, and he was stepping up as a leader in the band while John was struggling with personal issues. John later admitted he was feeling low during the making of the album, while Paul was brimming with confidence. This shift in dynamics created tension. John, who had always been the band's unofficial leader, started to feel overshadowed by Paul's growing influence. Add to that their different creative visions. Paul leaned toward polished pop, while John was drawn to experimental sounds. And you've got a recipe for conflict. Things only got worse in 1968 and 1969, as the Beatles worked on the White Album and Let It Be. Small disagreements turned into bigger fights, and the band's once tight bond began to unravel. One of the breaking points came in 1970 when Paul announced that the Beatles were breaking up. This news shocked the world, and it hit John especially hard. He was furious not just because the band was ending, but because Paul's announcement made it seem like he was the one calling the shots. John felt sidelined, like his role in the band didn't matter as much as Paul's. In a way, Paul's decision to go public with the breakup was a power move, and it deepened the rift between the two friends. John even said later that he felt Paul was trying to paint himself as the leader who started and ended the Beatles. That's a tough blow for anyone, let alone someone as proud as John Lennon. But the drama didn't end with the breakup. In 1971, the feud between John and Paul spilled into their music. Paul released an album called Ram, which included a song called Too Many People. John interpreted the lyrics as a subtle dig at him and Yoko Ono, and he wasn't about to let it slide. In response, John released How Do You Sleep?, a scathing track with lyrics that didn't just jab at Paul but outright attacked him. Lines like "The only thing you done was yesterday" and references to rumors that Paul had died and been replaced were brutal. This wasn't just a creative disagreement, it was personal. The fact that John and Paul never collaborated again after the Beatles' breakup speaks volumes. While other band members like George and Ringo continued to work together on solo projects, John and Paul's relationship was too broken to repair. Now let's circle back to Paul and Cynthia. Could Paul's closeness with Cynthia have been one of the sparks that fueled the tension between him and John? It's not hard to imagine John feeling betrayed. Here's his best friend, the guy he's been making music with for years, going out of his way to support his ex-wife the same ex-wife John had publicly moved on from. In John's mind, Paul's actions might have felt like a betrayal, a sign that Paul was choosing sides. And in the high-pressure world of the Beatles, where egos and emotions ran high, something as personal as this could easily spill over into their professional relationship. While there's no definitive proof that Paul and Cynthia's bond was a major cause of the Beatles' breakup, it's reasonable to think it added to the strain between John and Paul. After all, friendships can be complicated, especially when exes and loyalties are involved. Let's talk about Hey Jude one more time, because it's the heart of this story. When Paul wrote those lyrics, he wasn't just comforting Julian, he was speaking to anyone who's ever felt lost or alone. The song's universal message of hope resonates even today, decades after its release. It's a reminder that music can heal, that it can bridge gaps between people even in the messiest of situations. Paul's ability to turn personal pain into something so uplifting is a testament to his talent and his heart. And in a way, Hey Jude is a symbol of his connection with Cynthia and Julian, a connection that stood strong even as the Beatles fell apart. So, what do you think? Was Paul McCartney's relationship with Cynthia Lennon just a beautiful friendship, or was there something more beneath the surface? Did his support for Cynthia play a role in the tension that broke up the Beatles? Or was it just one piece of a much bigger puzzle? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed diving into this juicy slice of Beatles history, give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, so you never miss a new video. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. You're the real MVP. Let's keep the conversation going in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.